Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, on this Super Sunday Super Bowl broadcast. Super Tuesday is coming up in about 2.5 days. Really a day and a half. Tuesday. We're going to get into some of that election news. I know that we have Mike, Don, Andrew, Blake, and many others that are patiently holding. Toll-free number to join us, 877-590-5525. Or if you're listening to us off the mothership station, we transmit out of the stations across the country, 836-0590. Let's get into some economic news first. There's a lot of it, so I'm going to get into part two of this later, and then I want to get into the nanny state and just what life's going to be like underneath this new world order. You think the government's in your business now. You ain't seen nothing yet. And the Republicans are openly merging with the Democratic Party now. They were always joined at the hip the last 30, 40 years, but now it's going to become a lot more public for you. Here's a story I mentioned the last few days, a weekday show, and I hadn't got into. This is Bloomberg News reporting. I'm going to get this guy on. By the way, my weekday producer's in there. I want to get this Biggs guy on. He is one of the partners and chief global strategist at Morgan Stanley. Chief global strategist at one of the big five firms. And this is in Bloomberg Financial. Biggs tip for rich, expect war. And he goes on to say, Barton Biggs has some offbeat advice for the rich. It's offbeat. Insure yourself against war and disaster by buying a remote farm or ranch and stocking it with seed, fertilizer, canned food, wine, medicine, clothes, etc. And I would just add, not because it's going to happen, because there's a good chance it will. If there's any chance it will, you should. That's why I've got 2 alternate locations to go to. Do you? And it's not expensive to buy 4 or 5 acres somewhere, even if you don't have a lot of money. Just quit eating fast food and buying baubles and junk so you can strut around acting cool with other yuppie neighbors and you can prepare yourself. And it goes on to say you need to have guns. A few rounds over the approaching brigade's heads would probably be a compelling persuader that there are easier farms to pillage. He writes in his new book, Wealth, War, and Wisdom. And he goes in to talk about what we face as a society. Now, none of this is happening by accident. To give you the long and short of it, the central banks, and we have their own internal documents that have been leaked, openly have said they plan to implode the Western world and bring the economy down to absolute rock bottom so they can buy everything up. For the last 5 years, the institutional buyers, sovereign wealth, Fortune 500 companies have been snatching up all of the different commodities, that is things you need, like grain, wheat, corn, pork bellies, beef, infrastructure, like roads, water districts, reservoirs, communications. And they've been telling you, though, increasing the ads on television, telling you to buy all the junk stuff they're pushing. So they had to really increase their advertising the last 4 years as they move their money out. And again, I know quite a few very wealthy people. For some reason, I get calls from 4-star generals and billionaires and Hollywood people and rock stars and the rest of it. Might be hearing one of the biggest icons coming up during this week. Okay, I'm not going to get into it. The point is that I have learned in the last 4 or 5 years that anybody who's anybody is going to the Cook Islands, they're going to New Zealand, they're going to Costa Rica, they're going to the Pacific side of Mexico. The analogy is the fall of Saigon at the end of the Vietnam War, where our troops and people were hanging off helicopter skids, flying off the tops of the buildings. And that's basically what money's doing. I mean, you talk to real money, they say, our MO is there's not going to be in America. And I was talking to this top lawyer, and I said, what do you mean? They just said, well, that's the word. And I go, what do you mean not going to be? And they say total collapse. Then I interviewed the former head of the Treasury, the father of Reaganomics, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former Wall Street Journal editor. He says if the central banks continue their policies of devaluing the dollar and inflation, that we'll have a total collapse back to barter. And then you have the managing global director, let me give you his exact quote, chief global strategist and partner at Morgan Stanley, saying similar things. I'm not the one saying this. Let's just be clear about that. I mean, a miracle might happen. We may just have a horrible, long-term, 5-year recession. But when you watch the news up until a month ago saying there is no recession, it's a conspiracy theory, and then overnight they say, okay, we've been in a recession for a while. The MO I've got is we've been in a recession for years. From 2000 to 2007, the average median income household lost $1,000 in revenue, and their debt went to higher than late 1933, winter 1933, depths of the Depression. We have the highest private debt, individual debt, family debt that we've ever had in our history. We have a debt bubble that makes the debt bubble in 1929 look like a flea on the hind end of an African elephant. I mean, literally in size. I think it's even bigger than that. You add thousands of trillions of dollars to hundreds of billions. It's just that's the differences. And the big central banks, privately owned by less than 20 families, what do you expect them to do? They can create credit out of nothing, issue credit out of nothing, liquidity, currency. They flooded everything since the early 90s. They've used that, and now they need to blow everything out so everybody's over-leveraged, so when everything implodes, goes bankrupt, they then get to take retainership of all the real assets. It's chess. It's why they're in control, because they're cold-blooded and they're smart. And they openly say they're going to do this to all of us. Joseph Stiglitz left the World Bank as their chief strategist and economist in 2002. We made a big deal out of it and said, he says that by 2008, 2009, if we don't turn this around, total implosion. Magically, and I've interviewed him several times, magically, all of this is now unfolding just as he said, and it's by design. But let's not listen to Nobel Prize winners. Let's not listen to the father of Reaganomics. Let's not listen to the chief global strategist and partner at Morgan Stanley. Let's listen to the still mainstream corporate media that tells us by the end of the year we'll be out of the recession, and they tell us it's mild. Starbucks is cutting their coffee price in about half. They're not going to serve sandwiches anymore. I went into a local Austin deli that I've been going to for decades because I'll work till like 10, 12, 11 at night. I'll go there. It's always jam-packed. No one was in there. It was like 10 people in there, seats hundreds. I was in Dallas a few weeks ago. More than 80% of the billboards were empty. It's all unraveling. It's absolutely horrible already. But see, a recession is if your neighbor's out of work. A depression is if you're out of work. And so they know that if they just keep saying, oh, we're in a recession, that people will just keep playing along. And now they're saying, oh, we want you to get a third mortgage, and we're going to give you all $600 apiece, and we're going to give you more lines of credit. Yes, let's get deeper. Let's get deeper into all of this. So that's some of the news I have for you in the economy. Do what you will with the information I've given you. It's probably easier if you hear there's any corruption in government or any corruption in the financial markets is just say nothing bad exists. That's kind of the know-it-all, trendy, windy banner or anthem. But in my experience, people who are realists, people who study how the world really works, we get ahead. So I've been giving you good advice. I mean, I told you 6 years ago, get gold when it was $300 an ounce. It's 930 smackers. It melt right now, and the Wall Street Journal's reporting that it will hit $2,200+ if it's to be valued for dollar loss. It still hasn't really moved how it should. Silver should be 100 greenbacks, 100 Ds an ounce. It was as low as $6 an ounce a few years ago. It's now 17 plus. Was 6 Ds, as they say in Soylent Green. It was 6 dinero, $6, 6 clams, rubles, marks, lira, shekels, yen. It is now 17 plus. But I'm sure you're not going to buy because CNN and Fox have told you not to. They still tell you it's a bad buy. Don't buy at 17. Rush it and buy when it's 100 because you've got it all figured out. You listen to neocons on the radio, or you listen to whatever the idiot liberal channel is. What's the idiot liberal? No, not NPR. That's the Rockefeller National Petroleum. Air America, yeah, not National Petroleum Radio, but Air America. All bought and paid for by the foundations, the bankers that rule and issue all the currency. We'll be right back, slaves.